Just to give you guys a sense of my background, I've been done the agency holding company tour throughout Chicago and other cities and things along those lines. Looks like somebody's actually trying to join the room. But I've really focused my career on how do we unlock those consumer insights that can fuel media planning and really drive what I think Joshua and Kelly were getting at, which is the challenge that marketers face today is brand and demand, right? Like, we're not getting double the budgets, but we're being told we've got to grow our brand, make sure people are feeling good and trusting our brand. At the same time, we got to still pull people through that funnel. And this is our sort of way of going about that from a connections planning perspective. People are complex, and I think Kelly touched on the fact that, nowadays, the expectations of video everywhere, fluidly moving from screen to screen and keeping up with me and us keeping up with those behaviors, they're fluidly moving across need states. People don't like to be categorized as a persona or that I'm only in this need state and then there's a whole other group over here. They're fluidly moving from what they need from brands and they expect you to keep up. They are also safeguarding their privacy. So keeping up with them based on those behaviors is going to be a challenge, whether cookies are deprecating or not. Staying one step ahead of them is going to be a challenge that we all face. Oops. So we like to say our job from a connections planning process is to really keep it simple. Identify the highest value audiences with our clients and with our partners. Then we really spend some time architecting their entire decision journey. This is a real art in terms of making sure that we're specific enough, but not too, 150 steps into the journey where it's really hard to react to something like that. But once we have that, we really want to make sure that we're connecting our messaging and in those channels that are most relevant to them. And that's the real thing I want you to take away from this, is everything that we're talking about is from their perspective, not the marketer's perspective. It's not just what do we need to say or do for them, but it's really about when are they inviting us in for connection. So this is a big part of what's been fueling the changes at Rise. And we love to say, our mission is to really make all media, whether that's offline, online, direct mail, your website, every experience that we're creating as marketers and as clients and as marketing professionals need to drive business outcomes. And we get there by connecting people, those high value audiences, to their passions. And we have found through our research that when you connect with people in places that they're passionate about, you actually drive higher recall and you drive higher engagement and you drive higher performance. And then, really making sure our messaging, and that's what we call persuasion, is aligned with that, with performance fueling the entire journey that we're talking about. And this is really what, is our new sort of process in our go-to-market. I'm not going to belabor the steps here too much, only to say that we're going to kind of walk through the people and passion section. And then these other two legs of persuasion and performance will form the other sessions that you're going to see today. But understanding people and really humanizing that audience is central to this process. And one of the ways that we've done that is through the tech stack, or people stack, as we like to call it, that Joshua was talking about earlier. So, through our relationship with Quad, we have a view as to 90% of the households in this country, and we've built that spine of our data stack on households because it is the most resilient factor that Joshua talked about. But what we also have, because of Quad controlling about 12% of everything that comes in through your mailbox, we touch all the magazines, all the direct mail, all the catalogs that come in through your mailbox. We have a really unique view as to what you are passionate about. And if you think about it, your mailbox knows a lot about you when you think about what comes through there and what you care about and where you're shopping and all the things that you're interested in. And so, we have built Audience Builder, which is our platform for accessing all of that data so that we can see where are those audiences from like a heat map perspective, what are the passions down to that household level that we can really, turn on and make sure that we're connecting in, and really just get these views on how we're building your audiences. And these audiences are resilient so that we're building them for your direct mail efforts, but we're also building them for your digital efforts and really making sure that we're holistically thinking about how we're connecting with people. But when I talk about humanizing your people, this is like really where that art and science comes together. This is a view of our empathy map, and it really is just one way that we really try to dimensionalize what's really important to these high value audiences that we're finding for people. And what is their context outside of when they're engaging with your brand? What are they doing? What are they thinking and feeling and hearing and seeing? But we're really trying to get to what are their pains and what are their passions? Because again, when you connect with people on that kind of a level and can help solve some of those pains or really make sure that you're going to give them more time, fuel those passions that they have, it's going to be a lot more relevant for them and it's going to resonate a lot more with them. The other part of sort of this people stage, so after we've identified these high value audiences and we've partnered together and making sure we have a holistic understanding of these audiences, is really understanding where they are. And so you started that with that map on the audience builder, but this is really where a lot of the energy is put in, because we can get down to that household level of where they live, but we really want to make sure we're prioritizing the right markets, the right zip codes within those markets, the right sub 9-digit zip codes within those markets. And this is one area that we really partner closely with Google on. So when we're developing that picture of those audiences and really understanding where are these passionate people that we want to connect with, Google has access to search behavior from a category level, a brand level, and that's a key input into how we're starting to prioritize opportunities. Because we realize we may not have the same job to be done in every single part of the country or in parts within markets. And so we really want to get to a place where we've got our hyper-local objectives really well understood, and that we're developing our strategies based on what the jobs to be done with those consumers are. And so I'm just going to take you through a little bit of an example of how we then move into the passions place, but I really want to keep this high level. So this isn't meant to present to you a different client's work or anything along those lines. And I've purposely picked a client that's not in the room today, so none of your work is being shown. But it starts with that decision journey that we've talked about, and really being from their point of view, things that they're actually doing, understanding the steps that they're in when they're in those stages. But what's really interesting to us is that, the further you get into the journey, the more we know about those audiences. And so you'll see us start from those well-known active audiences that we know a lot about and work our way backwards here and really be, purposeful in how we bring people through the middle of that funnel. And then finally, how do we prospect with purpose and make sure that we're going after your high-value prospect audiences, but knowing, and operationalizing the things that we've learned along the way that gets them to that action we want them to take. But then we work really closely in making sure we map out what do we need communications to do, because we know that the right communications is driving about 50% of what we see as performance. So this is really a process designed around making sure those brand messages or that content that Josh was talking about, that it's going to do the lift of what we need it to do in order to pull people through. And I've already talked to this point that context is an attention amplifier. And when you do connect in the right moment, in the right places, as Kelly talked about, you really do see that performance come along with it. So the other thing that we bring, sort of our secret sauce to this, is to really identify the moments that matter and get to what is that connections opportunity. When is the best time and mindset and context for us to connect with people so that we can really make sure that, we are being as relevant and as resonant as possible. And so, for this particular shampoo brand, that really focuses on the experiences of the fragrance and everything along those lines, you could see it was both these moments of appreciation when they're feeling those things, but also moments of frustration when the relief and the energy that we provide could be really interesting. And so that just sets up the moments that we want to be in, and we use those moments to really align those to the journey before you start to see channel recommendations from us and before you start to see budgets. It's to really make sure everything that we're trying to do is aligned like that. And then we dive into their media consumption. But I think, the difference here, and this particular brand, again, had two different audiences, isn't just understanding which channels they're consuming at different stages, but also why. And that, sort of along this, the level of connection that they feel to those channels really helps to start paint that picture of how are we going to be contextually relevant, and making sure if they're looking at cable television as a way to participate in their communities and stay up to date, that we understand that before we develop messaging so that it's in line with what their expectation is and why they're consuming the media that they're consuming. And then I like to say we really sort of line that up through their media consumption throughout the day. And you'll see these moments, throughout the day, and this is all, backed by data so that we can say if we're really trying to reach people while they're celebrating life, that might be in the morning as they're getting ready, they're getting their family out the door and they're thinking about everything they're going to be doing today. But there's also that moment at the end of the day when they're also appreciative of the time they've had with their family and they're already planning tomorrow. But being really mindful and thoughtful of those connection opportunities so that we are meeting them where they want to be met with the right content. And then that's when, by trying to connect in these moments of receptivity, that sort of starts to outline the channels that we want to connect in. And so you start to see, again, this isn't necessarily prioritized, but now we know that YouTube's role is going to be in this, beginning of the journey, and that we understand what we're trying to do in terms of connecting with people in that moment. And that really starts the conversation with our partners. Once we've mapped all of this out, we're ready to sort of invite them in and say, all right, you guys now know what we're trying to do. Help us, come up with solutions together